Lobsters are a truly fascinating species. What is particularly interesting is that unlike its soft body counterparts, the lobster must shed its shell in order to grow. Where, for example, a baby orangutan's skin is elastic and can stretch to accommodate its growing size. A lobster, on the other hand, must shed its hard shell to be able to grow into a new one. So, it has a period of being extremely vulnerable before it moves on to the next phase of its life.
Research published by Aviva this month found that 46% of young adults had experienced stress or anxiety in the last year. Meanwhile, 39% reported that they had experienced depression. The report focuses on the...
On my 25th birthday, my mother was violently ill. She had guzzled 4 bottles of cheap red wine to celebrate my successes and commemorate her lost youth. She had been merry throughout the evening while she was tearing into the men in her life, but was certain that she was going to die in the early hours of the next morning. At 2 a.m, my mother was lying on her flabby stomach in the middle of her mirrored bedroom. She'd fallen victim to several angry bouts of vomiting following the evening's festivities. Surrounded by her reflection, her stretch marks were shining in a silvery mauve colour in the gap between her floral pyjamas and her vest. Meanwhile, my sister was holding a plastic bucket under her face and stroking her back between the bursts of tearful retching. My brother, on the other hand, seemed unable to sit still. He was flitting between each of the windows in our large suburban home and pushing them wide open to let in the bitter night air. Despite his efforts, the stench of acid and half-fermented party food hung heavy in the air. And I was standing in the doorway, watching the scene unravel before me. It was at this time that my arms began to swell. At first I felt an ache in my elbows as they began to set into a sharp curve. Then a pulsating feeling as my skin stretched to accommodate their new size, before frosting over with a soft, creamy shell. In the background, Mum was gasping and giggling. She was blowing raspberries against the plastic lip of the bucket and refused to let anyone take it away to clean it. "I'm being sick," she squealed, while my sister held her ash-blonde hair. Demi has always been more maternal than me, playing nurse whenever one of us felt poorly, and proudly declaring that she would have 4 healthy children and a golden retriever since she was a tiny tot. At 21, she still nurtured those dreams, but had embellished them with a glittering career in psychotherapy, a newly adopted smoking habit, and a generously stamped passport. "If you were an animal, what would you be and why?" she asked from the floor, snapping my attention back into the room. It felt small with all of us in it. "I don't know," I said. I had a showreel of animals flicking behind my eyes, but it wouldn't come to a stop. "Don't think too hard about it, just let it come to you." She scrunched her toes up inside her bobbling socks. "Like, I would be a puppy because I like cuddles and I think I'm quite loyal." She took a tissue from her pocket and wiped the spittle from Mum's gurgling lips. I noticed that her silence had left a gap for approval of some kind. "You're very loyal," I agreed as I studied myself in the glass door of one of the wardrobes. I wanted to say that I thought I would be a swan because of their elegance, but swans are spiteful, and that's not a quality that I want to be known for. I wanted an intelligent animal, something unusual, but I couldn't think of any exotic animals that were known for being smart. So I settled on a peacock because of their infamous beauty and the confidence that they exude as they strut around. Demi pointed out they also smell really bad when you get close up, which we both decided to dismiss, and she continued to rub Mum's back. Distracted by the smell of smoke, I turned around. My arms were feeling stiff and tight. The cream colour was bleeding into a deep orange, and I was taking on a hard shine. Bright flame-coloured flames sprouted out over my chest and down my stomach, over my hips and thighs and calves to my calloused feet. My nightdress started to feel tight and thick hairs poked out of the thin cotton. My stomach was swelling at an alarming rate and began to hang over so I could no longer see the gnarly toenails that had been curling before my eyes. Shh, shh, shh. No, you're not Alice. No, there isn't a white rabbit here. Come on, Mum, get up. Yes, you can do it. Your legs have not stopped working. Come on, yes, that's it. Get up. It's time for bed. I could hear Demi soothing Mum somewhere in the distance, but I couldn't focus on the theatrics on the floor. My ears were flooded with the sound of the jungle, animals cooing, insects chirping, leaves rustling, and my head was burning. It started slowly at my cheeks and was rising to the twin crowns at the top of my head. I remember watching, hypnotised by my long brown hair as it fell in clumps. The smell of singed hair rose up and a smoky layer clouded around my eyes. I reached up. My scalp was smooth. The pores closed under my fingers and sealed to a tight glossy dome. 2 antennae sprang up and hung over my now flat face. And suddenly, my neck felt stiff and the room seemed to go dark. I felt for my face to soothe the familiar grooves, but they were gone. My eyelashes had disappeared, and my eye sockets seemed to have shrunk to black pinholes. Finally, my hands began to swell. I held them out in front of me to watch my fingers sink into the glowing flesh before they crusted over into pincers. Gingerly, I shuffled towards the dressing table and screamed. I didn't recognize myself! I had transformed into a baby orangutan with a lobster's head and had bright orange pincers.